Hello, the internet. Welcome back to another episode of Black Sheep and Bad Apples. I'm your host, Lauren O'Brien. Tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about the Fountain of Youth and where it kind of came from and what's going on with it. But before we get too much into that, I want to introduce...
And how you can find it.
Yeah, I was going to say I want to introduce Sam on the show. Sam, how you doing?
I done pretty good. Yes, sir.
You're looking very
I
beardy.
am glad to be back on your show, your fancy podcast.
My fancy podcast right out.
I came all the way up from the Central Valley to be here
over
today.
Interwaves.
And lovely weather we were having. It was a joyful drive, no traffic.
Beautiful. Sunday.
Every passing lane wide open.
Wide open. And then we got our co-host with the most. That didn't work out. Mr. Sean. Shawnee, producer man.
I don't know what's going on.
Shaughnessy Hillard.
Shaughnessy Hillard. Oh, man, it's been a while. We've all been moving and shaking. Movers and shakers. Yeah, so this is it's been about, 6 months since we last recorded a podcast.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think the computer said 9.
9 months?
You shut your mouth.
We gotta get back on this, boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels good to be back. So, how are you guys doing today, first of all? How you feeling?
Well, I'll be honest, man. I'm a little apprehensive about this this whole topic because the last time we were recording, we had taken issue with all the negative stuff that we were like doing, like the topics that they were like kind of disappointing and maybe a little dark.
Yeah.
And so, like, at first blush, this feels like
it's
a fun topic.
You're
the Fountain of Youth.
But you're apprehensive. You're like, I know where this goes.
And I just feel I'm putting a $1 bet that somewhere in this story is like some dark ass shit, possibly with a bunch of dead natives. I'm okay with that. That's what It's history,
part of storytelling,
but I'm gonna be really disappointed if this takes too dark a turn.
Good,
Okay,
because I think it's actually gonna be a lot of fun.
Okay, good.
Okay, I was like, you ever found like a cupcake that looked really nice? It was left out on the counter and stuff, but then you take a bite and you're like, "Fuck!"
Yeah,
it's
done.
That was done 3 days ago.
It's like crumbly and hard.
That's why I'm like, it looks nice with the frosting and the presentation, but I'm waiting to see what the bite's gonna be.
Good. I hope you guys enjoy the bite because I don't know if you'll find one in this episode. I think it's gonna be pretty light in regards to how episodes go.
Good.
So today, I guess we're discussing the Fountain of Youth, and we can't do that without talking about the Caribbean again. So
obviously,
yeah. So the usual
stuff. There's a theme.
Yeah, there's a theme. There's always a theme.
And it's the warm tropical waters of the Caribbean.
Yep. And colonialism. You're like, the twist, there it is.
As the knife slides into my kidney. Thanks a bunch.
So the usual summary we'll read about Ponce de Leon was that he was born in Spain and he did some shit over there for a while. And then he heard about the Fountain of Youth, then he went to go find it, right? That's kind of what the story but that's not what happened, actually.
Oh.
Juan Ponce de Leon, and I'll be calling him variations of that, was born at some point between 1460 and 1521, and there's still some debate about it. Strangely, we don't know exactly who his parents were, but he was born into affluence and nobility. So,
but nobody knows who his parents.
No, and I found
Is he a bastard?
I kind of think
that sounds bastardy.
Yeah, it sounds bastardy.
Well, when you have like a 60-year range on when you possibly were born, you're probably a bastard.
Yeah, so
Fair.
Early in life, he was made a page of the royal court of Aragon, Spain. He seemed to have been a successful military man, having fought in the Spanish War against the Moors in Grenada. And in doing this, Ponce helped retake all of Spain as a soldier. And we're kind of summarizing a bunch of history here, but in 1492, the same year that Christopher Columbus sailed west to Asia, La Reconquista ended, and the Christian Spanish defeated the Muslim Moors. The end of the war meant the Spanish fighting force had successfully beat back the Muslims, but it had beat them back from the Iberian Peninsula. And this meant that the Spanish no longer needed such a large fighting force, and men like Ponce de Leon would be coming home. So you kind of see we got this noble guy. He goes out fighting war, and he's like, they don't need war guys anymore. So he's just chilling in his fucking, I assume, castle, because it's like the 1500s. And he's
You
like,
get, like laid off from the war.
yeah. He's like, what to do? I got
Well,
so much
damn.
free time now that I'm not killing Muslims. What to
like
do?
and like all soldiers who come home from war, there's probably an adjustment that is not easy to do, especially in 1500. Like,
Yeah.
whenever they're like mental health issues burning you at the stake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so not a lot of psychological help there. I don't think Freud's going to be around for a few hundred
And
years.
it's the 1500s, so like mental health issues were like, what do you got, ghosts in your brains?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's and yeah.
Bad blood.
But yeah, get the leeches. We'll treat his mental health issues.
You'll feel better in no time.
So, do you guys know what the term gentleman ranker or gentleman volunteer means?
No.
No. You guys want to take a stab at it, maybe?
Ranker, like Ranker.
Yeah.
I'd have to assume has something to do with like military ranks.
Yeah. It's-
And so a gentleman is also a rank, like in aristocracy, like
you're
in an
you're getting really
aristocracy.
close here, yeah.
So it's like it's probably like amounts to being like a sergeant or like master chief kind of level.
Kind of, yeah. Gentlemen volunteers, they were and still are. Rather, it's a term that's used to reference commissioned officers in the British Army. They were more or less soldiers that were wealthy and of nobility. They served kind of like every other soldier, but they would like eat with the officers. So they had like you have officers and then you have soldiers, and then there was like this kind of middle ground place for the gentleman rankers or the gentleman
Like
volunteers.
the private club.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they're
it's
like,
like
oh,
you-
you get to.
Because if you think about like the way it used to work militarily speaking, like if you were a lord, you were kind of like in charge of the fighting force that you brought to the king's army.
Yeah.
Right? Like the serfs that you conscript into your fighting force that you are then supplying the king with.
Gotcha.
And so that kind of broke down to like further on down the road, that turns into like if you're nobility, you have a higher rank than infantry
Yeah.
right off the bat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
for
So
sure.
so
You
it's
know
like
what I
you
mean?
Gotcha.
are an infantryman, but because
But
you're
you're
of
in charge of your
nobility.
little group.
Yeah. And so some would be brought on due to like a prior disgrace, like an inability to accept responsibility, like kind of like frat boys being moved to a different city or something. Many of these men hoped to be noticed for their valor and bravery, thus earning them medals and promotions. Others paid for these.
So I was gonna say it sounds
Yeah, you
almost
could
like
buy
a
your way
country
into
club.
rank.
Yeah.
Where it's like you pay your membership.
That's the best way
dues
to.
and-
Yeah, it's like a military country club, basically.
No, but they did do that. People
Yeah.
would buy ranks.
Yeah.
And you know, because with rank came better everything.
Yeah, for sure. Especially money, which is really funny too, because you'd like pay money to get a better rank, to get a better commission. Yeah, it's weird. And gentlemen volunteers are similar to a remittance man, and this is kind of off the beaten course for our topic tonight, but I thought it was really funny because a remittance man were like gentlemen, nobles, and soldiers who were supported abroad, meaning like their family at home would send them money to keep them away.
Yeah.
They were like,
Please stay there.
just stop just you can't accept responsibility here. Go join the military. We'll pay for you to stay over there. Please just get out of our hair. You're embarrassing us. I just thought that was a little funny because sometimes if they were dishonored in their homeland, they would be paid to be kept away. So both gentlemen volunteers and remittance men were on commission of some sort. So they, again, received money for conducting certain operations, but they could also receive things like medals and commendations and the like. So for Ponce de Leon, becoming a gentleman volunteer on Christopher Columbus's second voyage was an opportunity to increase de Leon's renown. So he's like, this is back in like the 1500s too. So these guys are like, Ponce de Leon, he's nobility, and what do rich people want to do? They want to like leave their mark on the world, So a big part of this is like, well, I got to go make a name for myself. I got to go, I'm Ponce de Leon. I've got to go and fight.
Ponce de Leon, the bastard son of Lord such and such, has something to prove.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's again, it feels like at this part of the story, like, yeah, of course Ponce de Leon was looking for the fountain of youth, but now it's It's not.
But it's real.
We're gonna get to that in a
Okay.
little bit. So yeah, Juan Ponce de Leon joined Christopher Columbus on his second expedition to the New World. This journey took 1,500 people with them to the Caribbean. These included such important people as farmers, soldiers, priests.
Jesus, how many boats?
I think this was like 3 or 4 boats.
1,500 people. On
Yeah,
3 or 4 boats.
yeah. Yeah, these included farmers, soldiers, priests, and 200 gentlemen volunteers. So 200 of the 1,500 people, they technically outrank you because they're rich.
Well, I mean that like breakdown wise, that makes sense. The 1,500 people divided by 200.
Yeah,
Was that like 7.5 people
Yeah.
something like that.
per other? You know what I mean? So it's like that's like a small group.
So from late 1493 to March 1496, Columbus and his men savaged the Caribbean, taking gold, women, and slaves, and establishing little small settlements.
Oh, I knew it would turn dark.
It's unclear what Ponce was doing during the few years after the second voyage, but he did come back in the spotlight as a soldier under the new governor of Hispaniola, Nicolas de Ovando. Ovando had been sent to the island of Hispaniola, this modern-day Haiti and the Dominican Republic, in 1502. He'd been sent by the Spanish crown to the island to improve the colony and create more order. However, Ovando thought he heard, subjugate and destroy the natives. Yeah. And so in 1504, Ponce would eventually gain the notoriety he was seeking when he was assigned by Ovando to conduct what would later be known as the Jaragua Massacre. He commanded troops to crush the native rebellion, and as thanks, Ovando awarded the role of provincial governor over the region he had just conquered in Hispaniola to De Leon. And he seems to have made a few...
He's a bit of a ladder climber.
Yeah, he's really working his way up the ranks. You got to get... No, you don't got to give it... Anyway, he seemed to have made a few excursions to the island that would later become Puerto Rico. On these exploration missions, he encountered an island called Boriken, something like that, by the natives, and eventually De Leon would establish a settlement near the northern bay. The settlement was to be called Capara. Now, the island at the time was called San Juan Bautista. So the island, the natives know this island is Boriken, but like the natives know it is Boriken, and the Spanish call it San Juan Bautista. And the settlement, I'm getting to it. And the settlement
We don't like
Capara
that name.
was eventually renamed Puerto Rico or Rich Port. Over time, however, Puerto Rico just became like a way of describing the entire island, and so San Juan Bautista, the name, would fade into history.
Wait, is that what Puerto Rico means? Is rich port?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, and so it's kind of yeah.
I just never thought about that. That's very simple.
And to the point, it really shows you that these guys weren't super creative back in the day. They're like, well, call it Mary Magdalene, or I don't know, the Port of Gold, you know.
They're just like, hey, where are you going? I'm going to the rich port. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Sweet.
However, De Leon had been successful in plundering gold on this island of Puerto Rico. And after arriving there, De Leon again discovered gold and slaves, and he was again promoted to governorship of this new island after brutally cracking down on a rebellion. Thousands of miles away, however, a young little upstart named Diego Colon was about to throw a wrench in the historical narrative of De Leon.
What was the dude's name?
Diego Colon. You see, Cristobal Colon, or Christopher Columbus's legacy, will ultimately be one of genocide, marking the start of colonial expansion into the Americas. Dick-faced Columbus also had children, one of whom, Diego Colon, had fallen not too far from the fuckery tree. See, the legend of the Fountain of Youth is ancient. Herodotus, born in 484 BC, he was one of the very first writers to conduct like systematic investigations into historical events. I believe he's Greek, yeah. And he, in 1484 BC, discussed the idea of the Fountain of Youth as being an ancient idea. And so, even before Christ was born, people were talking about the Fountain of Youth, and they were like, "Yeah, that's a really old thought." And since no one had ever discovered anything of the sort, it seemed that the Fountain of Youth went the same way as like the flat Earth myth, in the sense that not many people actually believed it. It was just kind of another fun thing to think about.
But it was like a common lore.
Yeah, yeah. And so when Christopher Columbus's rotten seed had come of age, a political dispute began between him, King Ferdinand II, and Ponce de Leon. See, Christopher Columbus's contract with the Spanish crown stated that all privileges and titles and governorships and properties would pass to his heirs when he died. Diego Colon was that heir. In a bitter dispute with the Spanish crown and King Ferdinand II, Diego was awarded all titles, including the one that Nicolas Ovando, the governor, had been filling. In 1509, Diego took power over all of Hispaniola, quote, by right of his father, and even gained the power of leadership over the colonial Puerto Rico, where De Leon was governor. His first act was to get rid of people who might be disloyal to him. He removed Ponce as the governor and second in command over Hispaniola and replaced him with a Juan Cerón. King Ferdinand, furious to have lost his colony officially to Diego Columbus, attempted to limit Diego's power. His way of doing this was to stop him from doing like more discovery, more excursions.
More expansionism.
Yeah, more expansionism, and instead he gave those jobs to Ponce de Leon as kind of a reward or consolation prize,
Right. Sorry, bud.
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey man, like we tried really hard. Why don't you
Really appreciate all that killing you did for us. Sorry you got the short end of this stick. Here's some more places you can go to do some killing.
Have you thought about
I knew
killing
this
up
would get
north?
dark. I knew this was just going to be like murdering natives 101 with Ponce de Leon. Fuck this cracker.
So, rumors at this time had been spreading that that to the northwest of Hispaniola were undiscovered islands, and the king encouraged Leon to pursue these islands. De Leon would eventually go
north
on
of Puerto Rico.
north of Puerto Rico, yeah,
So the Keys.
the Keys, and also what would
Jamaica
become Florida. Yeah, Jamaica
Cuba.
was already discovered. Cuba was already, quote unquote, discovered, and then kind of like up near Florida. Anyway, let me just read for a
Yeah, I'm
second.
pulling out a map. I'll look on my own.
He would eventually go on to find a couple more islands, this is De Leon, and what would later become the state of Florida. He had governorship of all lands he discovered for life and resource rights to the islands that he had found for 3 years. And all of this had come from the explicit instructions from the Spanish crown. And those explicit instructions mention nothing of the Fountain of Youth. Juan Ponce de Leon is often credited as being the first to discover Florida, but the Cantino map preserved in the Biblioteca Estense in Modena, Italy, shows a depiction of what might have been Florida of the region. That, in combination with many other slave ships finding islands all over the Caribbean and stuff, these kind of things indicate that he might not have been the first person to set foot on Florida. However,
He certainly wasn't.
Well,
People had been there
yeah,
for
yeah.
like 50,000 years or something like that.
he wasn't the first
so
European.
whatever.
Yeah, Sam. Whatever. I'm mad. He's even got his.
He
arms
wasn't the
crossed.
first like piece of shit. Cool. Awesome. Great.
Great.
That's so
A
great.
long.
I'd love
line
to say
of
my
them.
rant's over, but it's not.
No.
It's not.
But it's gonna get better.
Fuck Whitey. Sorry.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
in 1521, De Leon took a ship filled with 200 people, a bunch of domestic animals, and farming equipment, with the intentions of finally colonizing Florida. The native Calusa people. Sorry, did you have a thought, Sam? The native Calusa. You're gonna like where this ends. The native Calusa people, who had a central town nearby, attacked the colonists as they were trying to set up the colony. Juan Ponce de Leon was wounded. He had an arrow had struck his thigh. Colonists abandoned the expedition and sailed back to Cuba, where Ponce de Leon died of his wounds, having never found nor searched for the Fountain of Youth.
Ha!
Yeah, baby. So we got a twist. We got the natives dying, and then I give you another
Do
extra
not
twist.
fuck with swamp people.
Don't fuck with people from the swamp.
Just don't do it.
From here, I'm going to read a little from an article in the Smithsonian Mag written by a Matthew Scher. Quote, in fact, Ponce's name did not become connected with the Fountain of Youth until many years after his death, and then only thanks to a Spanish court chronicler out to discredit him. Gonzalo Fernandez de Oviedo y Valdez disliked Ponce, contending that he was gullible, egocentric, and dull-witted. The animosity probably had something to do with the court politics. Oviedo aligned himself with Diego Columbus, who is the son of Christopher, and a man who had helped push Ponce out of Puerto Rico. And thus, the legend of Ponce de Leon's Fountain of Youth was born. However, history would prove that if you lie about something long enough, it becomes real. and we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we're going
I'll
to talk
be
about
steaming that
the invention of the fountain of youth.
if we come back at all. And break.
Hey, bro, you gonna peel that onion?
Hella mi amigo. But dude, this is lame. Like, why can't peeling onions be awesome, Hermano?
I know, bro. Hella lame.
It's so lame, SA.
So lame.
Hey, bros.
It's Chad Johnson.
Peeling onions can take like so many hella days. And it's like lame. Like hella lame. For chicks and bros alike. But like, have no fear of stuff. Because I'm Chad Johnson's. And I'm here to tell you about my super dope invention. Chad Johnson's is Extreme High Velocity Onion Peeler.
Whoa, bro.
How, bro?
Here's how, bros. You take your onion
Cha, bro?
and you throw it hella hard at my patented Chad Johnson's is Extreme High Velocity Onion Peeler. That's it, bros. That's it.
Bro.
I know.
This episode was brought to you by snakes. Pray with them, love them, cuddly, release them into your yard as pest control. Piss off your neighbors, put them in your teacher's desk drawer. Snakes. Their limitations are equal to their amount of legs. Snakes.
Y'all ever come home after a hard week's work, got your Friday night paycheck, listening to country music, feeling good about being American, but you know you got to take the old lady out to Olive Garden for a nice dinner, and you're thinking, maybe I stink like shit, and I'd much rather smell like freedom?
Introducing the American deodorant, where you can smell like a combination of freedom and a bald eagle.
Well, you wait right here just 1 second. Pass that thing over here. Let me get a whiff. Well, I'm getting notes of all sorts of baby oil and gunpowder and tiger titties.
Woo! Bang 'em up, shoot 'em up. I now smell like freedom.
Do you like smelling like the Constitution? You like smelling like cattle dung? Illicitly earned money or maybe slush funds? Well, welcome to America, baby.
No, I ain't handing this sample back. It smells so damn good, I ain't giving it to you. This is going to be mine.
You'll smell so damn good, she'll be like, please tax my ass.
Pop the top, stick it on, rub it on, call it good.
You can take a shot of it. You can put it in your armpits. You can do whatever the hell you want to. Guess what? Because you're American.
You clean your guns with it. You can polish your truck with it. It's Freedom Pits for everyone. Freedom Pits deodorant from Freedom Core, America Freedom,
American
best thing,
freedom
America,
core
fucking free.
of America.
Smell like America today with America deodorant.
So believe it or not, people want to live in Florida. And in the 1870s, people began selling real estate around St. Augustine, Florida. One of these men was a real estate promoter named John Whitney. One day he started calling the spring located on his property the Ponce de Leon Spring. He would invite people up, have them visit the spring, and ask them to spread the word about the property he was selling. He wanted people to call the spring the Fountain of Youth and ask people to spread the word.
I mean, that sounds good for real estate marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in the 1870s, people were gullible. You know, they're putting like leeches in their brains and stuff like that to cure, warts and shit. Like these people, they don't know anything. You know,
Like, come buy these 10 acres, and it includes a fountain of youth. Ah.
like if you want to get news from the next county over, it's going to take you a day to walk there. You know, like these people, they don't fucking know. As the word spread, he would sell visitors water from the stream, and I'm going to quote an article for which I could not find the title or the author, but it was published by the Chicago Tribune, dated January 6th, 1992. Quote, his primary motive was to sell real estate. Now, during this time, Luella Day was born. During this time, Luella Day was being born. She was born in 1870 in Baltimore, Maryland. She was a practicing physician in Chicago for some time before she left to the new frontier, the Yukon. But before we continue talking anything more about Luella, I have a disclaimer about everything else we're going to talk about. And it comes from an archived version of the website flheritage.com, which states, quote, Until her death in 1927 in St. Augustine, she fabricated stories to amuse and appall the city's residents.
I'm a bit of a bullshitter myself, but go on. Couple that with never let a lie stand in the way of a good story, and you pretty much have a nice evening at the pub.
Oh man, and she is just everything that happened. I'm so excited to tell the story.
That just changed my future experiences anytime I go out now.
Yeah. Having no fun, try lying.
Try lying to
This
everybody.
week's podcast was brought to you by lying.
In her book, are you guys ready for this title? Ready for this? The Tragedy of the Klondike. This book of travels gives the true facts of what took place in the goldfields under British rule. It's the entire title of the book. If I got a note on it, a little too long.
Yeah.
I think maybe you
A
could.
little hefty on the
Yeah.
Awful dry by the end.
Yeah, dude. Halfway through, you're
Well,
like,
too much.
It
I'm already
started with
bored.
me thinking about ice cream, and it ended with me being bored.
A little too much salt on the cracker.
Yeah.
In her book, she says that humans have always been gold mad. In the introduction, she notes that the lust of gold is an unquenchable passion.
The King's Medal.
It's the king's medal. Now, I ended up reading this entire book in a single day in preparation for this podcast. It's boring and as shit. It's
You
long-winded.
read the entire. How many pages is this?
206 fucking
oof.
yeah, 200. I read it in a single day.
Don't you have a life?
That's-
Jesus Christ.
No,
I was going to say,
No,
you said in
I really
preparation
don't.
for the podcast, and I heard I had a lot of time on my hands.
I didn't have anything to do.
I got shit to say about time for reading because I read so much.
Yeah.
Have so much time for doing it.
So yeah.
My life is boring.
She wrote her book after leaving the Yukon. She ended up there in the Yukon by random chance, being that she, quote, had decided to take a rest from her work as a lady doctor. Now, the reason I say lady doctor is because in her book, she brings it up so much. Like, what she's arguing with somebody, and they're like, don't go and do this thing. And she's like, I'm probably not gonna. And then the very next line is, and being very feminine of me, I went and did the thing. Like, it's the era of it is like, reading this book is really interesting because she's very much portraying herself as like this dainty lady doctor. And so I think it's important to add like context to the era, you know, because this is like the early 1900s.
She
you know?
portrays herself as dainty.
Not.
I have to read the fucking book now.
Yeah,
God damn
it's
it.
wild. And all lies. Like, most of it is fucking lies. Like,
Even better. Fiction.
Yeah. She's got this heroic dog that saves her. Like, it's fucking
That
wild.
I believe.
I kind of do,
The one
but
truth of the whole thing
Yeah,
is
it's
like
the dog.
an actual heroic
I
dog.
kind of do too. But once we
Wait,
get done
what?
with this story and then you read the book, you're gonna kind of like all of the things you're gonna have questions
And
about.
it was at that point that Fido loaded my musket and shot the intruder. Like, okay.
So while at home enjoying her time off, she was thinking of where she would travel to rest when she was approached by her secretary, who gave her a newspaper. The secretary pointed to an article about the Klondike, and Luella says in her book, quote, "My resolution was taken on the instant, and I said, yes, I will go to the Klondike. I will attend the sick, and I will make a fortune." And that is why I went to the goldfields and how the story came to be written. Again, she's not a good writer, and it's very boring.
Well, I like how she instantly put like save the sick and make a fortune
And make
You're
money.
just like
You got gold? Not a lot of life left? I can help you.
I can
I'm
cure
a
you.
demure lady doctor.
Just
demure and petite lady doctor.
it's like, how do you feel about this, Dr. John?
What was it? Duella?
Luella Day.
Luella Day.
Luella Day. And she later becomes Luella Day McConnell, which we're about to get to. In her book, she says she would eventually strike it rich in the Yukon, being a land claim owner, miner, and eventually a hotel owner. However, this was a lie. Arriving in the Yukon, she married and became a secretary to a man named Edward McConnell, who owned a mine and the hotel.
Got married and then became a secretary of the dude. He was like, yeah, you want to get married and have a job?
But she
You're
never mentions it in her book. She's like, I own the entire time she either lives in the hotel and then she later purchases
No
the hotel.
mention of the husband she's planning to kill.
Well, she does, and we're going to get to that
does
too.
kill him.
No.
Oh, damn.
Well, no. Anyway,
The thought's there, though.
Yeah.
her entire book mentions nothing of a husband, and she always talks about people being fine specimens. Like, the book is really thirsty sometimes.
So I was like,
It's Smacks a little of Jane Austen.
You think she's a
bit.
good doctor? No, but she's easy on the eyes. Oh.
In the book Tragedy in the Yukon.
Not a good doctor, but she's real handsy.
She's real handsy. the-
Tiny, demure, petite handsies.
There's this one scene in the book that I didn't put into the script for the podcast, but she's trying to kind of eavesdrop on these gold mining people, and she wants to like stand next to them and like read something so as to be kind of like. So she
Super subtle.
Speaking of super, she grabs a soup can out of the trash and just starts reading the label.
Nothing weird to
Because
see
again,
here.
it's the 1900s.
Just a petite, demure lady doctor reading a soup
meanwhile,
can label.
Meanwhile,
wow.
the miner's like, what's up with the chick at the soup can?
And what's the soup can label say? Like, did they have ingredients, or was it just like soup can soup
She doesn't specify on what she's
with
reading.
real pork?
Can o soup. Pork.
Yeah, pork flavored.
In the book Tragedy in the Yukon, Luella details her first time panning for gold. After being taught by a random miner who she just walks up to, she finds $60 worth of gold dust, which is worth nearly $2,500 in today money. She was allowed to keep it because it's tradition that a miner always keeps their first pan of dust. Later in the book, Luella will describe seeing her future husband, or maybe current as regards to the book, anyway, Edward McConnell outside the hotel he owns, like this, quote, "As I rode into the city of tents and drew reins in front of my hotel," she claimed to own the hotel at this point in her book. "I was assisted by Mr. Louis Schonberg to dismount, and I noticed my man with the store clothes." And I think that means like there was a gentleman who had store clothes as opposed to like handmade clothes because it's the Yukon, you know. "I saw my man with the store clothes unloading golds in bags, taking it into his tent opposite. He was his cleanup, that's what they call like a big haul. His cleanup was so great that it took 7 mules to carry it into camp. I asked who he was, and Mr. Schonberg replied, 'That is Edward McConnell, the laziest man that ever rode into a mining camp. But he knows he knows a mine when he sees it, and that dust you have, and the very first you panned out, came from one of his mines.'" So there's a lot going on there.
I think I'm going to start introducing myself
I ain't
as...
saying she a gold digger.
I
Well,
think,
no, she literally is though.
Yeah, no, but she is in fact
She's
a gold
also
digger.
a gold.
I think I'm going to start introducing myself to people as Mr. Schonberg.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Tim. Hi, I'm Mr. Schonberg.
Well, and I love, and I love that this is how she's talking about
So
her.
fancy.
It's just like, oh.
So this supposedly is taking place in like 1898, like when she's writing this, and that's kind of when she was supposed to be married to Edward McConnell, but she wrote this book after she left the Yukon, and again, this is how she mentions Edward McConnell, her husband. She's just like, yeah, the laziest man to ever come into town. He's got 7 mule sacks of gold, you know, and it's like, why are you hiding things, Luella? What are you keeping a secret? Because like again, she lies about fucking everything. It's great. And so again, I think they're implying that like because like he's the laziest man that ever rode into town. I think they're implying that he doesn't do a whole lot of mining. He just stakes his claims. You know what I mean?
And lets other people mine it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm putting together. There.
You got my gold? Like, yeah. You
Well,
own the
good.
place?
Keep
Yeah.
mining.
Oh, fuck. All right.
In 1900, Luella Day McConnell and her new husband, Edward McConnell, left the Yukon. Some sources say that they left due to financial problems. In her book, she writes about how corrupt the local government is and how the city government, the British and Canadian governments were all trying to legally swindle her out of her property. And again, I read this entire book, and a lot of it is just her being like, and this guy over here is trying to kill me because his friend is friends with this guy, and that guy over there wanted me dead because of it. Like, it's everybody is conspiring against her.
He said, she said.
They're trying to rob me. Well, see, you just had to fill out this piece of paper. I'm
Nope.
not filling out no paper.
No, she does that. She does that with like
you're
tariffs
robbing me.
crossing from like the U.S. line into Canada. Like they have to land at this specific point on the ocean and then hike all the way up this fucking mountain called Chilkoot Pass. And when they get to the top of Chilkoot Pass, there's fucking customs agents there. And they have to pay like tariffs on like clothes and shit that they bought at the top of this mountain after a hike. Oh man. because this is a lot. Like people are wagoning
Got
this
you by the
shit,
short
you know what I
hairs
mean?
on that
Yeah,
This ain't no duty-free zone.
no, it's not. I actually have a photo here that if I can find it real quick, I wanted to show you guys of the Chilkoot Pass.
Maybe that's why Grandma was always mind blown by duty free.
Yeah, I'll put this up online so
You don't have to pay
listeners
tariffs on
can
that
hear it.
hiking up the mountain?
But like that's a line of people, and you guys will notice. Do you guys want to describe that to the listeners?
You ever been to a ski resort in like the Rockies?
The lift line is
Yeah.
astronomical.
Yeah,
But instead of a chairlift, there's just a goat trail.
it's an
with
unbroken
people.
Yeah, an unbroken chain of human beings climbing up the top of this snowy mountain, which was at the time like the snow was 20 feet deep and shit. Like this is not an easy hike for these people.
Oh no, you can ride down the mountain. It takes about 5 minutes. How long does it take to get up there? 2 days.
Yeah, so for whatever reason, they leave to Florida. And in St. Augustine, they bought a tract of land outside the city for $14,000. The property had a spring on it, which the locals called the Fountain of Youth. They went back to the Yukon shortly after, and I'm going to read from the Chicago Tribune again here. Quote, their return was unhappy. They apparently lost their money, and Luella McConnell began to see conspiracies everywhere. The Canadian government was trying to poison her. It was after her money. It was telling lies about her. In 1903, she was forced to leave Canada and went to Alaska. In 1904, she returned to St. Augustine without her husband. There were rumors that he drowned while crossing a creek in Alaska, but in fact, the couple had separated and later divorced. So I'm assuming, and we don't have any more information other than this, I'm assuming Luella's lies caught up to her, and her husband was just like sick of it. You know what I mean? Because imagine being the husband to this conspiracy paranoid woman who's she's kind of like an early Alex Jones. You know,
They just got divorced, but she's like going to the next town. Like, what happened to your husband? He drowned.
he drowned in a creek.
It's like, dude,
Luella,
he's just in the next county.
yeah, we saw him
I
last week
just,
at the.
I just had a beer with him. No, he dead. It's like, okay.
To be clear, I think Luella made up that story about him drowning. Like,
Yeah, that's
I,
all.
I 100%
She's just
believe
literally
that.
like down the street, like, yeah, he's done. He's dead. He died. And it's like,
Like,
it,
Trying to
dropped you-
garner sympathy and be the victim.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of what her life is. So wearing her ermine coats, her large jeweled rings, and having a diamond encrusted front tooth, Luella Diamond Lil Dave McConnell went back to Florida.
all right, I gained a little bit more respect for this lady. Just a,
Diamond Lil.
Diamond Lil.
Did you do that?
Nope, that's a nickname she gave herself, I think, or the people in Florida gave her.
I don't know if I'd hang out with her, but I'd have a conversation with
She
her.
sounds like she's the most gaudy, awful, like gossipy person in the world.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
she just
What's up with the chick?
I
with
have totally met people like this woman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
She began marketing the spring on her property as the Fountain of Youth for which Ponce de Leon had been searching. She started seeing, she started bringing up people to the property to see the
Earth's
spring
flat. The math works.
and to buy a bottle of water. She started seeing it as a tourist attraction, and she would later call her water youth water because people in the 1900s were very clever. During this time, developers were purchasing property and building like luxury homes, roadside attractions, kind of like that. So the Florida thing.
What year is it?
This is early 1900s. This is probably 1906. So yeah, all around Florida, and Luella thought that if she could get in on some of this tourist attraction stuff, she could make some dough. However, skepticism and mystery surrounded the Fountain of Youth. People were sort of thinking it couldn't be, but I imagine like, you know, because it's the 1900s, I imagine like a strong sales pitch could really get you to get on the fence about it, you know? Somebody was like, no, I swear it's Fountain of Youth. These people have tried it. They love it. These people were like, I love it. Again, I'm sure that there's a part of you that's like, I fucking want to believe this.
I don't really care if it's true, but the water's nice.
It's good water. In 1908, wanting to prove once and for all that it was, in fact, the Fountain of Youth, Luella decided to do the only reasonable thing left for her to do. A quote from the Chicago Tribune. In 1908, she sailed for Spain, telling everyone she was going to look for proof that her property in St. Augustine had been the site of the Fountain of Youth discovered by Ponce de Leon.
Well, that's like going out of your way to make this like.
She's like, people keep calling me a liar, so I'm going to Spain to prove it.
We got to take this marketing to the next level.
So she was in fact
Out of her mind.
delusional
Yeah,
and like psychologically unwell, not just like a, I guess like you already psychologically unwell if you are a pathological liar.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess part of being a pathological liar is that you believe your own lies.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Like
and
you
it-
start to.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, as I was saying earlier, like if you just lie about something for long enough, it actually becomes true. You know what I mean? And that's how I feel that she lives a lot of her life. She's either completely delusional and buys all her shit, or she knows that she's full of it and is just grifting. And it's hard to tell. Actually, it's not because of the story we're about to talk about. She came back to Florida without anything that could prove she was sitting on the Fountain of Youth. Shortly thereafter, Luella, I know, weird.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's probably fine. Something
But I
will
know a
probably.
person that could vouch for me that you'd believe that you're never going to talk to.
The king himself told me. Shortly
I
thereafter,
didn't vote for him.
Luella miraculously found a stone cross 14 feet high and 14 feet across. And I want to be clear, it's actually laying down here while walking through her property. She used this as proof of the fountain, saying that it had been placed there by Ponce de Leon himself to mark the site of the Fountain of Youth. She found it
Like
when
a giant X.
when a tree
That's
had
what I
fallen
was-
on her
yeah.
property. Yeah, like a big X. A little longer on one end than the other because it's across. So again, she found this when a tree had fallen on her property. However, some people accused her of lying. One reason people accuse her of falsehoods is because some reports that the tree had, that the tree had fallen on her property. There are some reports that actually say that it was cut down, the coquina, which is a type of stone, I think, cross-planted there by Luella or on Luella's orders. So people think that she was walking through and was like, "What's under this this tree fell down. Oh, what's under it? A cross." But it had like axe marks in the tree. So like we're like, Luella, why are you lying about everything? Near the same time, Luella found a salt cellar in which they found a salt holder with an engraving of Christopher Columbus. Luella would claim it was a gift or memento from Columbus to Ponce de Leon, and then that it had come with a piece of parchment. The piece of parchment allegedly supported her claims of the Fountain of Youth by detailing Ponce de Leon's landing and activities on St. Augustine. In an article entitled "The Fountain of Youth is Within Us," which I think is a bad title, Kimberly Meyer spoke to archaeologist Dr. Kathleen Deegan, who works for the Florida Museum of Natural History, who said in regards to the large cross found on the site, quote, "No, there's no archaeological evidence that the stones of the cross were placed there in 1513, she wrote me. Coquina had not been discovered, let alone quarried at that point. There is a great deal of uncertainty among researchers as to where Ponce de Leon actually did come to shore in Florida. The stones could have been the stones could have been part of a farming household known to have been in that area in the 1770s and dug up by Luella McConnell around the turn of the 20th century. Regarding the salt cellar, Dr. Deegan was equally circumspect. She herself had seen the original years before. It was done, she told me, in a Baroque style common to the 19th century.
So some shit she bought.
It's just some shit she bought. She put some shit in the ground. She's come see the original Ponce de Leon's Fountain of Youth. Luella, lost my spot. Luella had the note of parchment translated by a Spanish teacher, which was written from the perspective of a crew member of De Leon. But unfortunately, it became too faded to read, and the salt holder disappeared mysteriously, and no one else got to see them.
Bitch just killed that person. I need you to vouch for me.
No,
Just
Just fucking say that you saw the salt holder.
This sort of reminds me of the story of the founding of Mormonism.
Yeah, it's almost like they're the same.
Could anybody vouch for this? Well, they could, but they went to a place you've never heard of. It's real.
It's real. So nobody else got to see these. Pardon me. Nobody else got to see these relics, but the tourist attraction was a hit, and soon it was St. Augustine's biggest attraction. Luella eventually began to bill her property as Ponce de Leon's Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park and began to sell postcards.
Got to throw that archaeological in there to give it validation.
Yeah, it really kind of
Really
polishes it
ties
up.
it all
yeah,
together,
yeah. Llewellyn's behavior became more erratic from there. She would write to President Taft. Yeah, she doesn't hit this mark and start. That you got to keep going.
She's just about to hit
You
her
gotta,
stride.
yeah,
with the
you got
crazy.
you got to
Yeah.
lean. She would write to President Taft about a secret society bent on murdering, again from the Chicago Tribune, many defenseless women in the state of Florida as well as other states. She was arrested in 1916 for firing a gun within city limits. She told the judge that the deputy who arrested her was trying to kill her by feeding her poison apples.
And the judge said, "Well, it's just a simple case of female hysteria." And he hit his gavel and sent her on
let
her
you go.
petite and demure way.
And I'd, again, like to remind everybody here at this point of the quote I used earlier. She fabricated stories to amuse and appall. So, like, her entire life, she's just like, oh, she's so awesome.
If it sells.
It's great. And all of this could have either come from mental health disorders or a genuine belief in her lies, or she could have been grifting. But either way, I'm going to read a quote from Roadside America that shows the wild variety of things she got up
I
to.
mean, what are you going to do? Walk to the library and look it up in the encyclopedia?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're either going to, believe her or not.
And again, it's the early 1900s. Like, if it sounds believable or almost maybe a little fantastic, but within the realm, you're going to believe it probably.
You think that's real? I'm not sure, but it costs $5 to find out.
It's good water. I mean, I don't feel younger, but it is good. Again, I'm going to read from a quote from roadsideamerica.com. Quote, "It was a popular stop for celebrities in what had become a tourist town, and Luella was a constant focus of local news and gossip. She wrote to President Taft claiming that powerful men in Washington were plotting to murder women. It was rumored that she hosted illegal gambling parties in her house, and that she'd shot and killed a neighbor's horse that wandered onto her property, and that she was jailed as a suspected German spy in World War I."
Huh.
Sam, your face, it's so good.
You can't hear how many times I've just blinked.
Fountain of Youth sounds like a commie.
Oh. Wow.
So I'm going to continue the quote from Roadside America. "As time passed, Luella's claims grew more amazing. She said that she was a descendant of the Bonapartes and owned Napoleon's pocket watch, that people had tried to poison her with gas, Coca-Cola, apples, and a watermelon, that the old Spanish fort in St. Augustine had been built...
She had a little too much Coca-Cola one day. This stuff's kind of good.
that the old Spanish fort in St.
Just one
Augustine
more bottle.
had been in fact built by the Chinese, and that Jesus would return to Earth at the Fountain of Youth." She's really covering all the bases
fort
here.
At the Fort
The
Augustine.
Spanish fort at St. Augustine
Okay,
was built by the Chinese.
I believe it.
You know what? I'm gonna let her have that one.
Yeah,
I'm
she
just
can
gonna let her
have
have
that.
that one.
You got to sprinkle some amount of possible believable truth in the mixing
Yeah,
bowl
a
of
good
like
lie always contains a little nugget of truth.
Yeah.
exactly. Where you're just
know?
like that's somehow I don't believe it, but I can't argue.
And next week we'll be talking about being a successful liar versus being an unsuccessful liar.
The art of lying.
Yeah. She eventually sold the property to developers who planned to build a resort on the site. Shortly thereafter, however, Luella seemed to regret selling and sued to get it back. As they do, the court cases took a long time to reach any solution. When the courts finally made a judgment in favor of the development company,
Adoy.
yeah, they had already given up trying to develop the land. They were just like, fuck it, we'll do this somewhere else. Jesus. In 1929, Luella, quote, drove her car into a ditch and died, according to Roadside America. The land was... She was drunk, right? I gotta think she was wasted.
Man, it's probably like a fucking rum and coke back then was a completely different beast. You know what I mean? Like,
This isn't rum and coke. This is rum and cocaine.
yeah, it's a speedball.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Again,
who the fuck knows?
yeah, and they don't say
I mean,
anything
this
about
lady
it.
sounds like she was huffing fucking ether.
But yeah,
You know
certainly.
what I mean?
And
Like
you said she died how?
drove into a
She drove into a ditch.
Drove into a ditch at 5 miles an hour.
yeah, in her like
It's not like she was driving
That
a
Model
Ferrari,
T.
you know.
no, they were way past that. I mean, like
like you know you're doing.
1906. There's like
You know you're doing
10
well.
production car companies or something
Yeah,
like that, and like cars are becoming very popular.
Yeah.
But like say this.
So they could probably get up to like 30 at that point.
Oh, I mean, I don't know what the top speed for like the nicest Cadillac in 1906 was, but yeah, 30 sounds.
That sounds right.
20. I mean, look, 20 miles an hour in a thing that doesn't have a seatbelt. The
Yeah.
steering wheel, right, is on a straight shaft that goes to the front of the car. Yeah. And is made out of like brass and wood.
Yeah.
You know,
For sure.
no airbags, all that jazz. We all know that. So it might not take much.
No.
And how old is she at this point?
Oh shit, she was born in 70, so she's 57, although she lied about her age by like 10 years or so.
So she could have been 80.
No, I'm going to say she was probably between like 57 and 70 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so she was getting up there certainly.
Right.
The land was eventually bought by Walter Frazier. He increased its popularity to far greater heights than Luella had. The Fountain of
He
Youth.
wasn't a nutcase.
Yeah. That's exactly it. They
It's
actually
like people like, okay, go on, and then she's like, and then the man trying to poison me, and they're like, all right, you lost.
Yeah,
me.
I'm good. They live on the moon. It's like, Luella, what are you
Okay.
talking about? The moon is made of cheese.
What are you drinking?
Yeah.
Oh, it's rum and coke.
The Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park still exists to this day.
Now with mercury.
Oh,
Oh, it does.
yeah.
Oh, we should go.
Yeah. After his death, the site was declared America's first continuously inhabited European settlement. After her death, rather. After archaeological evidence was unearthed. The evidence showed that Pedro Mendez de Aviles, a Spanish explorer, had founded St. Augustine in 1565, and it had been inhabited one degree to another continuously since then. So it's the oldest,
I actually
the oldest
did,
city
I did know that because I
in the
feel
United
like
States.
my parents went and stayed there because my stepmom's sister lives in St. Augustine, and they stayed at like the oldest hotel, like continuously operated hotel
Yeah.
in the United States or something like that.
Yeah.
And everything was made out of like
Raw timber.
no, it was like seashell stone, like
Oh, that's cool.
like sandstone. That's that coquina
Yeah.
stone. Is like coquinas are those tiny little clams that are like all different bright colors, like
Okay.
pinks and blues and yellows and greens
Yeah.
and shit. And there's stone, I think, made of that. I'll Google it, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is, and that's what like all these buildings were made out of.
Yeah. The park boasts exhibits like the Spring House, which has, the spring. It has a planetarium. It has peacocks and a blacksmith exhibit. You can visit the site of I might butcher this name, Timucuan village, which was near the Spanish settlement site. It also has a chalupa boathouse and a cannon firing, although the word cannon is misspelled on their website. A few blocks away is the Fountain of Youth Spa. So although the Fountain of Youth never existed as the mythical youth-giving spring we've been told, the story is truly an example of if you just fucking lie about something for long enough, maybe you too can make something out of nothing. Oh, coquina, that is really beautiful stone.
And it's, yeah, if you like can zoom in on this image, it's just there's like hollow voids in it and stuff. And
So-
it's just like these tiny little shells.
So the moral to this story today, gentlemen, is if you want to be successful, just never, ever admit you're wrong and lie about everything.
I'm living the dream then.
Yep, living the dream. And that's the episode of the Fountain of Youth. How you guys feeling?
Oh, I'm sad that it's over.
Yeah, Luella's a
Gone
really
too
fun.
soon.
Luella's a really fun character.
What a nutter. But you kind of like, I guess in this day and age, there's so much fake news and there's so much of that shit going on. Really, like constantly, we are daily inundated by it that on some level it's sickening. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, oh man, more of this. But when you look back at something like this that occurred, this couldn't never occur today.
Oh no!
You know what I mean?
One
it would
Google
be
search and people
debunked so
Yeah.
quick. But even back before the advent of Google and the internet, we still were debunking stuff rather quickly. But in the era of Luella, people, we got cars, but and telegraph and news travels, but it's not like you got to go. Fuck, you got to know how to read. A lot of people didn't know how to read.
Yeah.
Like we don't even think about that. The level of ignorance that people possessed was so vast compared to today. Like you're only ignorant today because you choose to be.
Yeah,
in a
truly.
lot of ways. You know,
Or you're selective in your information.
At least in America.
Yeah, yeah.
And in any developed nation, and even in a lot of developing nations, like before we know it, like natives in the middle of the Amazon will be using the internet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? On their solar powered Starlink because they fucking decided to.
So because we miss Luella so much, and we are going to miss her when she's gone. I do want to read just another quote from the end of this Chicago Tribune article because I think it's great.
I thought you were going to say you ordered a bottle of the water, and I was like, yes.
I might actually. That seems like a fun thing to keep on your shelf. So again, I'm going to quote from the Chicago Tribune article. There's one final mystery about Luella Day McConnell. Was she the inspiration for a young banker and poet named Robert Service? Service and McConnell lived in the same town in the Yukon about the same time, and some believe it was Luella he was thinking of when he wrote the song "The Shooting of Dan McGrew." The poem begins with the classic line, "A bunch of boys were whooping it up in the Malamute Saloon," and ends, "I'm not so wise as the lawyer guys, but strictly between us two, the woman that kissed him and punched his poke was the lady known as Lou."
Huh.
Yeah. So she might have killed somebody out in the Yukon.
I'm not going to be surprised about that.
I mean, either. I would not be.
Skeletons in the
Because
closet.
it really does sound like, I mean, I can only imagine. Like, obviously, there's women in the camps and stuff, but there's not a lot of them.
No, and they're
You know what I mean? And
immoral
so-
women too.
Well,
They go to dance halls.
yes, and
Sluts.
show their ankles. But like, you show up as a petite, demure lady doctor in the like.
Lady doctor.
Listen to the description. It's tense up until the hotel. Like people, it's just like it's a tent city.
Yeah.
Right. That's the condition. So like, you know, she probably had her pick of unwanted, attention.
Yeah. Well, and also
Aren't
there's
you
not.
married? Not anymore.
And also, like,
Oh.
this is a mining town, so there's like, I'm sure the ratio is a ton of dudes to a couple of chicks because it's way out in the middle of nowhere. Of course, I don't really know that, but I would imagine that makes her, kind of, she gets to have the pick of the litter, as it were.
Do we got a picture of this lady?
Yeah, actually, I do.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, we got a picture of her right here.
Does she look like Sloth from the Goonies?
I don't know. You be the judge. All again for you.
Oh god,
for you
she's really
listeners.
old in this picture. I want to
Yeah.
see what she looked like when she showed up in the Yukon.
Yeah, she didn't have
Like
any photos of that.
she's clearly been frowning her whole life.
The,
It's not an attractive look.
the eyes show me handsy when she was younger.
Well, and I feel like I feel like she's like 50 in that photo,
I
and
ain't
like
saying she's a gold digger.
you can already tell like whatever she just said to that cameraman was a lie. Like the moment before that camera was the photograph was taken, she lied to that person. I don't know why. I see it in her eyes. She's stern and just. I love this woman
She's
so
got-
much.
She's got that look like I'm running you right
What
now,
is
but
that
she's
Eagles
kind of like
song? Ain't no way to hide your lying eyes.
Yeah.
it's like a frown with a smile behind it, where you're just like, something's up with that. Like you're like, I'm not happy. Then why do you look like you're about to laugh? But frowning.
Lady doctor.
Well, that's it for the episode, guys. It's been fun. Thank you, listeners.
News.
Leave us likes and comments and send us ideas for episodes.
Or food.
Or you could also send us food. We got the P.O. box now.
Money too. Money. But
Again,
food. I prefer food.
Yeah,
We won't spend it on drugs. We'll just eat it.
just food. And with that, have a good night, listeners.